Hello and welcome back to Rey's Gaming and More Title Update 1. With the Arch-Tempered Rey Dau update, various sets have had their meta updated, and I've covered Charged Blade and Longsword so far. It's now time for Dual Blades. And it's been a pretty nice update for Dual Blades, with single pieces providing quite a lot of relevant value, lots of skills on it like Stamina Surge, Evade Window, and Evade Extender, just nice benefits. There's also the fun of Latent Power if you do want to commit to that, and the Affinity and even Stamina benefits that provides. Before we do get into everything though, as always I do want to thank and credit Josh for his work on the builds and the math behind it. While I play Dual Blades and could discuss things with him, he's the veteran who considers what's available now and if it can result in higher effective output. As usual then, I'm just presenting that today, so with that said, let's get into it. So let's take a look at the set itself, the new Rey set. One of the standout pieces, as always, is the helmet with Weakness Exploit, Maximum Might and Stamina Surge on it, which is really nice. For us though, on Dual Blades, things like the gloves can be really good. You get that little bit of Evade Extender, which is handy, but also 2-3 level decoration slots. It's not bad at all. Even the boots, which isn't so good for a lot of people, can be good for a stamina dependent build, like say Dual Blades or Bow, for 2 levels of Stamina Surge and you're still getting a 3 deco slot. Then we can't forget the actual benefits of the set. Thunderous Roar is going to increase the time that Latent Power actually goes. At 2 set, it's 30 seconds more. At 4 set, it's a full minute on top. So you're going from 2 minutes of Latent Power to 2.5 minutes, or even up to 3.5. Lord Soul is even more interesting though. At the 3 piece of the set, you get Guts Tenacity, which is going to prevent you from being killed by a lethal hit, but before that happens, you're getting boosted attack but lowered defense, and after it happens, you got boosted defense and resistance. To be specific about what this is, it's a 5% attack boost of your base damage of your weapon. So in the case of a properly rolled Artian weapon, that base attack is 225, 5% of that is 11.25. So for the whole hunt, because you're probably not going to kill it right, 11.25 raw is really decent. Lastly, we have the whole topic of Latent Power, which some people like, some people don't. Obviously for Dual Blades, it does have a double up purpose of the reduction of stamina depletion. That is pretty damn amazing for this playstyle and the stamina drain that we deal with. Not to mention the big stack of Affinity. To trigger it, you need to be near a big monster for 2 minutes, and then you get that 2-minute uptime, or even longer if you have different parts of the Rey set. Or you can take about 133 damage total. What speedrunners are doing when they're using Latent Power is just popping on something like Corrupted Mantle, even bombing themselves before the start of the fight, and then activating it for most of the duration of the fight. Even if you're very unkind about how often Latent Power actually has uptime, it still results in great affinity and benefits, even with minimal investment. So by no means is it a bad skill, and if you do occasionally take a hit, you make that uptime even better. The longer a fight goes on, the more overall you have Latent Power in that fight. So we do quite like it. So what are the sets we're looking at? Well, we have the Agitator focus version, the Counterstrike focus version of essentially the same set. This is going to be your top DPS. We have the classic Dragon Convert, thanks to Convert Element, which is going to push your Dragon element super high for 1 set. You'd use this against monsters that are weak to Dragon. Lastly, because it's fun and interesting to look at, we do have a Latent Power set, which has 5 levels of Latent Power and will work as a fun and effective set. For your weapon, for all sets, we need to discuss the idea of an element Dual Blades weapon and making sure you're using the correct element Dual Blades against the correct target. So, you know, Ice is going to be your ideal element to take against Arch-Tempered Rey Dau because that's its weakest element. You can see with these Dual Blades here, we have 225 base raw and 270 element. This is because we have the attack infusions and the attack boost across the board and no investment in the element except for the base craft. Josh did this math to kind of represent the difference between getting more attack boost versus getting more element boost, with the same target being the exposed head of Zoshia, which is a 30 element hit zone. I've already explained this a couple times, so I'm just putting the math on screen for you to see, but this is the Zoshia head with a 30 hit zone for element with white sharpness and the average element motion value being 0.8 for Dual Blades. Overall, it's about a 0.552 damage increase for each element reinforce, while talking about a really good element hit zone, by the way. Meanwhile, per attack reinforce, you're getting 5 raw per that, and Zoshia's head that's exposed is a 65 cutting hit zone. The average motion value for raw on Dual Blades is 15, so this is a 0.6435 damage increase per raw reinforce, while again talking about a good hit zone. So even in the scenario where we've got the best element hit zone we can have for a tier 3 monster in the game right now, raw still wins. I would love to see this change though in the future, but for the moment, if you're making an Artian weapon, we go all attack boost and infusion, and on the initial craft, we pick the element that we need. You bring the correct element for whatever your target's most weak to. For offensive decorations, it is as before. 3 crit boost to increase the damage of the raw crits, 3 element attack of the relevant element that you're using, and on that you've got 1 extra skill. On that you could go crit element for more DPS output, you could go 1 level of focus like we have here, just to make the experience a bit more comfy as you build up the demon gauge to work with. I quite like this and often go for that. Alternatively, you could put handicraft here just to help your sharpness management. But we do have great sharpness management thanks to having 3 levels of razor sharp and the 1 handicraft on that. Right, let's start with the first set, which is essentially these 2 as your options. All that's changing between them is the talisman. You can see on this set we have the Challenger Charm, and on this set we have the Counter Charm. That is basically Agitator or Counterstrike as skills. Agitator is more passive, and you benefit from it without thought. Sometimes the monster will enrage and now you're stronger. But then you have the Counterstrike aspect, which is going to provide you more raw output for the set and ultimately means more effective raw if you're reliably proccing it. This means that Counterstrike will proc occasionally, maybe you took a hit, maybe you intentionally barrel bomb yourself, and you get this big bonus to your raw for 45 seconds. 25 raw for just taking a hit is amazing. But some people just don't like that skill. They don't like the idea of needing to take a hit. So for those people, we have the Agitator set, which is not going to be as much effective raw, but won't take any thought about intentionally proccing Counterstrike. So let's take a look at that first version. We have the Rey Dau Gamma helm with its amazing skills. We have Gore in beta on the chest piece. We have the Gamma gloves. We have the Gore belt in alpha for its 1 level of antivirus, that's important. And then Gamma Ray on the legs. The Agitator set obviously needs Agitator levels, so we get that from our talisman. This provides this skill list: full weakness exploit, stun resistance, stamina surge, antivirus, and a bit of constitution, agitator, evade window, evade extender, and then we have the 1 levels of adrenaline rush, burst, and maximum might. So obviously with the 2 gore pieces, we have the whole frenzy thing and antivirus to proc that, and with the 3 pieces of gamma, you're benefiting from Lord Soul. In this case then, that's going to be 11.25 raw for me throughout the entire fight because I don't plan on carting. To achieve that skill list, we use these decoration slots, mostly a lot of weakness exploit, and then the 1 decorations for your 1 level of burst and adrenaline rush. The alternative version of this then is the Counterstrike version, which is literally just changing the talisman. It's the same set otherwise for the 3 levels of Counterstrike. As you can see, it's the same armor pieces and it's even the same decorations the whole way. Very easy to swap between. But let's take a look at the math to really iron this out. So for the Agitator version of the set, let's look at the raw. We have 225 base raw, and we're getting that 5% increase from the Rey 3-piece, bringing us to 236. We got 1 burst, 1 adrenaline, giving us 18 raw total there. Then we have 2 levels of Agitator, and if we assume a 65% average uptime, that's just going to amount to 5 raw, bringing us to 259 total. Multiply that by 32% from the white sharpness, bring us to 342. Then we have all our affinity, 30% from weakness exploit 5, 25% from the antivirus, we have the 5% Artian base, and roughly 3% from Agitator 2 with about 65% uptime. You know, technically we do have 1 maximum might in this set, but that's almost never going to be relevant. So we put reliable affinity at 63%. Now we have 3 crit boost, but with 63% affinity, it's more like 21.42 as the damage increase. So we multiply that by the 342, and that brings us to 415 effective raw. But now let's look at the Counterstrike version that's going to be more. We have the same base raw, we still have the Rey Dau 3-piece for the 5% increase. Again, we have burst 1 and adrenaline rush 1, but now we have Counterstrike 3, which is 25 raw. So that brings us to 279. We multiply that by the white sharpness, bring us to 367. We have less affinity because we don't have Agitator, but that's 60% affinity compared to 63%. It's not a massive difference. Again, we have crit boost 3, so it's more like 20.4% damage increase. We multiply that by the 367, and that brings us to a noticeable increase of 444 effective raw. So between the two, Counterstrike is going to give you more effective raw if you're making sure every now and then to take a hit, or just normal gameplay, you take a hit now and then. On the topic of element for both sets though, they have the same element. It's 270 base element. We have Ellie Attack 3, so that's a 20% increase, brings us to 324. You get 60 more element from Ellie Attack 3 just raw, and then 40 more from Burst 1, bringing us to 424. But that's the bloated element, so we divide that by 10 to get the true element that's 42.4. Multiply that by 15% because we have white sharpness, and that brings us to 49 effective element with this set, which is pretty damn decent for the meta of the game right now. But we have 2 more sets to look at. Let's start with the Dragon Convert set. If you're ever going against a dragon weak enemy, this is what you want to run. And it's kind of similar to what it was before this update. The only real change here is that we're running the Gamma gloves from the Rey set. So we have regular arkveld in beta for the helm and the chest, and then we have gore in beta for the waist and legs, using of course the improved in Title Update 1 Convert Charm that now provides 2 levels of the skill. This leaves you with full weakness exploit, 3 constitution, 3 evade window with my setup as I'll say, the convert element, antivirus, bit of evade extender, the 1 adrenaline rush, 1 burst, and a couple of set bonuses like arkveld's hunger. So as we land continuous attacks we get a little bit of healing, which is really nice. So all that's really changed here compared to the Title Update version of this same build is that the singular Rey piece means we have a bit more defense from armor and a bit of levels of evade extender, which is handy but certainly not a massive change. The reason you do this for dragon though is because of the convert element skill is going to massively improve the dragon element that you have, but also cause these big bursts of dragon blast essentially while it's active. To activate it you take any source of element damage, but you can also iframe that with a perfect evade on dual blades, which is why it's so good. To achieve this skill list though, we have the decorations here, so pause if you want to look at it. These 3 evasion jewels though could be whatever you like. It could instead let you invest in Counterstrike for more raw. Personally, I really like having, evade window. You could completely drop these or change the levels that you want. Maybe get some more stamina benefits. These 3 2 slots are up to you. Anyway, the math for this set is the same as before because it's the same skills. 225 base raw, we get 18 total from burst 1 and adrenaline 1, bring us to 243. Multiply that by the white sharpness to bring us to 321. It's got 60% affinity that's reliable and 3 crit boost. So we'll multiply that by the 321, bring us to 387 effective raw as before. It is indeed less raw than the other 2 sets, but in exchange you get incredible dragon element and the dragon explosion blasts. So on the element side of things, you've got 270 base element. Times that by 20% from Ellie Attack 3, bringing us to 324. We get 60 more just straight up thanks to Ellie Attack 3, brings us to 384. You get 40 more from Burst 1, and then Convert Element 3, that's 180 dragon while going. So that brings you to 604. Debloat that by dividing it by 10, and that's 64.4 true element, and then the regular dragon explosions, so this is insane for hunting down dragon weak monsters. Right then, last up we have this 4th set, the Latent Power Set. It's actually going to be comparable to the Agitator Set, and if you want an alternate to that, there is benefits to this. That's because when the 5 levels of latent power is going, and it's going to last for 3 minutes and 30 seconds per proc, you've got 50% affinity added, and the stamina depletion's down by 50%. It feels amazing. To run this then, you'll need the Gamma Rey set for the helm, the chest, the gloves, and the waist. And then we run the Mizu legs in beta for the 2 levels of burst. This also has the Exploiter Talisman for weakness exploit in that slot. These are the decorations, the very limited amount, to achieve this skill list. Full weakness exploit, full latent power, we got 3 burst, the maximum might, which is not too relevant but can come up, the evade extender, and then 1 level of adrenaline rush, constitution, stamina surge, and the benefits of the set. The longer latent power and guts tenacity to slightly increase our raw. Let's take a look at the math to show how good this actually is. Once again, we have 225 base raw. We multiply that by the 5% of Rey Dau's 3-piece, bringing us to 236. We have 12 raw from burst 3 and then 10 again from adrenaline 1, bring us to 258. Multiply that by the white sharpness, bring us to 341. Then we've got the reliable 65% affinity. Thanks to weakness exploit, latent power 5 with assumed 60% uptime, which by the way is very generous because if you never take damage, that's going to be a 60% uptime thanks to the 4-piece set, but it will be even higher uptime if you do take a hit now and then. But we base the math on the most reliable thing, which is going to be that 60% uptime. Then we have 5% more from the Artian base, and there is a bit from that maximum might, which is mostly ignored on dual blades, so we don't worry about that for the math. So at very least 65% reliable affinity. With 3 crit boost, that's a 34% damage increase, but with 65% affinity, that's more like 22.1. So we multiply that by the 341, and that brings us to 416 effective raw. You may know that that's the same as the Agitator set. So if you're willing to engage with latent power, it's actually very good. But what's interesting about this set is then the element, which is slightly higher than the Agitator set because we have burst 3 instead of burst 1. So the base element's 270, you get a 20% increase from Ellie Attack 3, bring us again to 324. You get 60 from Ellie Attack 3 as a baseline, and then 80 from burst 3, bring us to 464. We'll debloat that and bring it to 46.4 true element and multiply that by 15% thanks to the white sharpness on element. Bring us to 53 effective element, equal effective raw, and then slightly more effective element. There's strong argument for this set over the Agitator set, so I think you should definitely give it a try. But yeah, there you have it. That's our overview of the AT Ray update for dual blades. Pretty hefty with, quite a few sets to consider there. The Dragon Convert element still remains great for your Dragon weak parts, so sheer most of all. But yes, the general set leaning into Counterstrike is the highest option today, but I'd strongly recommend you try out the Latent set if you don't like the idea of Counterstrike, or just for fun because god, it feels good when Latent Power's going, especially at level 5. Either way, I hope this was useful to you, and if it was, be sure to drop a like. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.